So far, I've done book recommendations for Fuck Racism, Fuck the Patriarchy, Fuck Ageism, Fuck Heteronormativity, and Fuck Realism. But I'm not gonna lie, Fuck Pollution was a little bit hard because I really still wanted to keep with the old diverse trend in my recommendations. So whatever type of books you love to read, you'll be able to find a book represented in it. And it's still diverse, not as diverse as the others, because I tried so hard to find a romance book that worked in this prompt, and I couldn't find any, and for that I'm really sorry. But I do hope the other books in the list do help you in putting together your TBR. But yes, here are the books for my Fuck Pollution prompt.
To be talking to you, Belladonna. Should have taken a break, not an Oxford comma. Take what I want when I wanna, and I want you.
Hello everybody, Nora back again. So the very first book on my list is Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class and Environmental Quality by Robert D. Bullard. I'm going to say right out the bat, this is actually kind of technical writing with an almost scientific approach in the way in which Bullard takes us on or shows us the correlation between environmental and social justice and how they are both necessary for a basic right to live in a clean environment. He also shows us the role that race and class plays in this situation by citing empirical studies like the fact that out of 8 garbage incinerators in Houston, 6 of them are located in black neighborhoods and 1 of them is located in an Hispanic neighborhood, because corporations and governments like to follow the path of least resistance, and people who are marginalized based on their race and their class are easy pickings for such institutions. I think it's a book that we all need to read. I haven't read it yet. As always, a lot of the books on this list are books I have not yet read, and I sincerely hope I get the chance to do so soon. But this is a book I think we all should read, if anything, because it gives us this opportunity to see these situations through new eyes. For example, the Flint situation, because yes, even till now, Flint still does not have clean water. And if you've not started considering exactly the role race and class plays in that situation, then this is definitely a book you should bump up your TBR. Next is Living Downstream, a scientist's personal investigation of cancer and the environment by Sandra Steingraber, which is part scientific study, part history lesson, and part memoir of Sandra, who was afflicted with cancer, just like the other members of her adoptive family, and survived it. And after surviving it, she decided to trace the correlation between the concentration of environmental toxins in rural Illinois, which was where she was living, and the rise in cancer incidence. And also conducted the same study in Long Island, in Boston, and all throughout the United States, all to show us how connected our health is to the world all around us, across water, land, and air. It's a wake-up call to all the type of pollution we come in contact with in our everyday, and also a dismal blast from the past as we realize that things have not gotten better. In fact, they've kind of gotten worse, and we don't seem to be fixing the situation. And I forgot to mention it, but Dixie also covers the racism and the fuck racism and the fuck classism prompts as well. Now, on April 26, 1986, Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power station exploded with devastating consequences, and the whole world watched as the disaster was hushed up by the government, as people were lied to, and as the effects were minimized and brushed off until 2006, when journalist Svetlana Alexievich, is this Swelt or Svelt? Lana? Is this Svetlana or Svetlana Alexievich? I hope I did not just murder her name. But anyway, Alexievich released a book, Voices from Chernobyl, The Oral History of a Nuclear Disaster. It was a first-person narrative told in interviews by the hundreds of people who were affected by the meltdown, from the innocent citizens to the firefighters who were the first to arrive on scene. It's a brutal, honest accounting of a horrifying event that has destroyed so many lives and is still destroying lives even till this very day. Next is Silent Snow, The Slow Poisoning of the Arctic by Marla Cohn. In this book, Marla Cohn, an environmental journalist, takes us on a journey of the invisible buildup of industrial pollution in the Arctic and explores the history and science of how we came to realize and understand this, and also by extension how the type of pollution that is harder to sense and impossible to see was concentrating on places that were far from the factories that were creating it, and ultimately how this influx of pollution infringes on the human rights and sovereignty of indigenous communities for whom the Arctic has been their home for generations. Silent Snow also shows the resilience of indigenous communities and how the leadership of these communities press the issues at both national and international levels. And as such, you can see it also does fulfill the fuck racism prompt as well. Next is Plastic Ocean, how a sea captain's chance discovery launched a quest to save the ocean by Captain Charles Moore. Now, the conversation around the world right now is, how do we cut down on the amount of plastics we produce and use per day? How do we keep them from continuously poisoning our oceans? 2 months ago, New York followed in the footsteps of California and banned plastic bags in the state. So this is a conversation that is happening right now, and I won't say it's all thanks to Captain Moore, but he did help with the conversation when in 1997 he being Captain Moore had set sail for California from Honolulu and decided to take a shortcut so he could get home just a bit faster, and so took a shortcut through the rarely traveled North Pacific tropical gyre. Is it gyre or gyre? I will write it down below so you can see it, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But basically took the less traveled route and realized that he was surrounded by plastic soup. He inadvertently discovered the largest garbage dump on the planet, and this was so bad that the amount of plastics in the water outweighed the zooplankton, that's the ocean's food base, by 6 to 1. There were six plastic to 1 zooplankton in that area, and that, along with his findings about the secret life and hidden property of plastic, galvanized the rest of the world to pay more attention to this man-made blight that is slowly poisoning us all. It's yet another book I think it should be required reading for us all to at least read it for at least once in our lifetime. Next is The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. Now, if you thought that children's book had nothing to contribute towards the conversations about environmentalism and pollution, you would be wrong, because The Lorax. Now, Dr. Seuss weaves us a tale about mindless progress and industrialization, the mindless cutting of trees, and the danger it poses to Earth's environment. It's a call to us all to take care of nature so that everything does not eventually become as bleak as we fear it would be. 7th book on my list is The Color of Distance by Amy Thompson. This tells the story of Jonah, the sole survivor of a team of surveyors who were marooned on a foreign planet, whose inhabitants live in perfect balance with their environment. They have their houses built among trees. They voluntarily commit suicide once they hit the age of 100, just so that their population does not place an excess burden on their ecosystem, even though they are genetically engineered to survive up to 1,000 years if they want to. And even though it does paint this picture of an utopia where everything is all simple and stuff, things are not as simple as they appear, and things do get very dark very soon. And it's yet another book I have high on my list. Next is Liliths Brewed by Octavia E. Butler. Now, I'm certain nobody's surprised that Octavia makes this list. One, she is the queen of science fiction in my book, and I'm certain a lot of people agree with that. But also because Liliths Brewed, which contains books 1 to 3 of our Xenogenesis series, answers the question of what if it was that human beings decided to engage in a full-out nuclear war and in so doing destroyed the planet. What happens next? We follow the answers of this question through the eyes of Lilith Iyako, who is one of the first humans to interact with the Oankali, an alien species who have come to rescue our dying planet by merging genetically with humans. It's crazy, it's zany. There were a lot of things that had me go, what the hell? But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Totally would recommend. And I do think it fits the prompt, just because sometimes the question is, what do you do after? What happens after we've totally and completely ruined and destroyed our planet? And this book definitely seeks to answer that. And I think not just this, but I think The Parable of the Sower as well, also by Octavia E. Butler, also does seek to answer that. So if you have that book as well, you could also consider reading it too. Next up is Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. Now, disillusioned by the story state of the planet, the brilliant and also psychotic scientist Crake decides to genetically engineer a new brand of humans who lack all the destructive features that are responsible for the present state of the world. These humans are more efficient. They know how to obtain all their energy needs from grass. They also have zero interest in a hierarchical and industrial society, which by the way, is also something that Octavia E. Butler believes is what is also inherently wrong with human beings as well. So basically he creates this new brand of humans that he believes are perfect, and then proceeds to create a virus to wipe out all humans so that his genetically engineered children would inherit the earth. Like I said, bonkers. Now, trigger warning, because this book does contain mentions of abuse, assault, child pornography, torture, and public execution. So yes, be warned about that. And then we have the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, imagine a world restless and hostile, wrecked by volcanoes and earthquakes, a world where humans value survival above all else and have organized their society dealing with scarcity so they can make it through years of darkness and famine and to survive the poisonous air and water that is all around them. Now, imagine in this world, you have people who can actually control the earthquakes, and that these people live among others who both hate them for their abilities and also seek to exploit them to their own ends. Now, into this world walks Esun, a mother whose husband has murdered their son and has kidnapped their daughter, and she would break herself and go to the ends of the earth to save her daughter. Now tell me that does not give you the right and pleasant type of chills. Like, this book sounds fantastic and I cannot wait to read it, and I'm just extra grateful, like really grateful that I did get it last year thanks to Injeri of Onyx Pages. Like, I won a Kwanzaa giveaway, I won this book, I cannot wait to read it. And yes, it totally completely works for Fuck Pollution too. So if you've always wanted to read 5th season, you can read it for this prompt. Next is New York 2140 by Kim Stanley Robinson, a book that paints a pretty realistic picture of climate change in the year 2140. And in this year, the water level has risen. New York is completely submerged in water, and now the skyscrapers have become little islands and the streets have become canals. And we experience this entire story through the eyes of the residents of one particular building, and the author uses the book to warn us that if we do not act fast, the consequences would be there and there will be no fixing or going back from it, and we would have to live with the consequences. It's a book that delves into details about, you know, global warming, about climate change, about wealth distribution, about universal health care, and tells us this story is true, a very diverse and varied cast of characters. And yes, yet another book that is high on my T-brow, and I want to read it, and I hope I get to read it soon. Next on the list is Protectors of the Wood, Phoebe Comes Home by John Kix Miller. This is the first book in the Protectors of the World series, which is an illustrated story about a group of misfit teenagers who come together to save the world from climate change, starting with Phoebe, who has a dream about a green man who tells her to return, that everything is at stake, and so returns home to Middletown after a year in college, only to discover shocking changes happening in her childhood home, from corporations buying up all the local businesses to one of the ministers preaching about climate change, only for him to be met with a group of his parishioners storming out of the church in protest, to a valuable gem known as the Dreamstone that is attracting quite a lot of interest and unanswered questions. And Phoebe sets out to make new friends and save our world, and it just sounds fun. I've heard that the illustrations are really cool, really gorgeous, and it also seems like quite a step from a lot of the more other serious books that I've been mentioning from the start of this video. If you're still in the mood for funny, heartwarming YA stories about conservationism, then look no further than Carl Hiaasen's Hoot, which tells the story of Roy, a teenager who's new to Florida, who bands with his new friends to stop the destruction of a burrowing owl colony. I know it's weird, but I'm going to put a picture of burrowing owls so you can see. Childhood Noria, who was always looking forward to opportunities to save animals from being forcefully removed from their natural habitat, would have really dug this book, and so I cannot wait to read it because it just sounds fantastic, and I cannot wait to read it. Now, if you prefer your stories as anthologies, however, you might consider picking up Under the Weather, stories about climate change, which is basically, like I said, an anthology with stories that range from rising sea levels to change in animal behavior and human lifestyle, all from different localities, from Siberia to Canada to Australia to the UK to Sri Lanka to the Philippines. Now, anthologies work very well for me because for me, I know that it means that I would find at least 1 or 2 stories that I would really love and enjoy, and that's why I always gravitate towards anthologies. And if that's the case from you, then Under the Weather might be a book you might just consider checking out. And next on the list is White Dolphin by Gil Lewis, which is set in southwest England, and we follow Kara, whose mother, a marine biologist, disappeared without a trace like a year before the story starts. She befriends Felix, a new boy to the town, who initially she could not stand, but after together they're able to save an albino dolphin. They decide to come together to take on a powerful fishing business in order to get them to stop dredging in their harbor because of the damage it does to the local marine life, which I think sounds brilliant. And speaking of Gil Lewis, he also has yet another book on the list, and that is this children's book Moon Bear, which tells the story of Tan, who had to move to the city in search of work and got work at a bear farm, but has to keep himself from speaking out loud at the mistreatment of the bears in the farm, because you know when he speaks he's worried about losing his job, and if he loses his job then he'll not be able to take care of his family, which is the reason why he came to the city to look for a job in the first place. And you can see that in itself already speaks to classism as well. Now, Moon Bear also shows how deforestation leads to misery for the animals whose habitat was the forest that is being cut down, and it's a double whammy. I cannot wait to read it. It just sounds fantastic, and like Gil Lewis just seems like he just wants to take all my heart and just stomp on it, and gladly I want him to do so. Now, the next book on the list, let me start by saying, what happens when a 12-year-old boy goes through an unusual growth spurt and ends up looking like a 30-year-old man? He gets to travel to space. That's what happened. That's all I needed to know about this book to add it to my list. Add to the fact that it said that it's hilariously funny, and also would have us wanting to travel to space, but at the same time wanting to take care of the earth while we're at it, which just sounds awesome because we're preserving the planet and at the same time exploring space, which is just 2 things I'm always down for. And so I had to add this book to the list. I just had to. Next is Breathe by Sarah Crossan, which is pretty polarizing because there are some people that really love this book, and there are some people that really hate this book, like really hate this book. I, on the other hand, have not read the book, but I'm really intrigued by the premise of a world where there is no air, and if you need to breathe you have to pay for it. Like, that is so insane. And then we follow 3 separate teenagers. Alina, who believes in there's a government conspiracy and wants to revolutionize the world. You have Queen, the spoiled brat, who has lived a pampered life all his life and has never been worried about not having enough hair. And you have B, his best friend, who's always worried about not having enough hair. And it just shows also classism, because this also fulfills for classism, and it shows like what happens when corporations are the ones in charge of it, and what the poor have to do to survive in a world where, I repeat, there is like air is not free. Insane. I did hear though that there's a bit of a love triangle in the book, which pisses, because you all know how much I hate love triangles, but I have no choice. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that the love triangle is not too long and that we get through it pretty quickly. Next is Watership Down by Richard Adams, a book that tells the story from the perspective of rabbits who have to flee their home due to the impending destruction that is being wrought by humans on their environment, and basically they have to battle predators and humans themselves as they are on this long journey to find a new home and find a peaceful society for themselves. And it's just, I blame George Orwell with Animal Farm, because ever since I read that book as a kid, I've always been fascinated with books that, you know, feature animals. And Charlotte's Web also did not help any matters. Sorry about that. That thunder is like really raining. It's really raining, like really heavily right now. So yeah. But Charlotte's Web also did not make matters any easier for me. So I've had this fascination for it. So Watership Down just sounds like it's going to be a delight to read, and I cannot wait to get to it. And then finally we have Oi, Get Off Our Train by John Brenningham. Now this is a book about a young boy who dreams that he's traveling the world on his toy train, and along the way he basically picks up animals that have become part of endangered species due to the destruction humanity has wreaked on their home habitat. Like, so he basically picks them up to save them along the way, and it's It's a reminder of the destruction we're wrecking in the world. The fact that there are so many animals that have become endangered because of mankind's choices and decisions, and just a call for us to do right by the planet, by nature itself. And it's a great book with a great message, and it just sounds warm and sweet, and I can't wait to read it. And I want to have it on my shelf. And if you're just like, Bonoria, you're an adult, that's a children's book, I don't care. It's a great book. I want to read it. I want it on my shelf. And yes, so those are the 20 books I am recommending for the Fuck Pollution Prompts. I hope sincerely that you find at least 1 or 2 books that would help you. That's for those that are currently working on their TBR and have been stuck on book suggestions that would meet the Fuck Pollution Prompt. So I got you. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if you are planning on reading any of these books. And as always, like I said in my announcement video, please do not think that you have to read a book to hit the Fuck Pollution Prompt. You can also just read a newspaper article, or maybe just an essay or a paper about climate change or global warming or the endangering of certain species. Just knock yourself out. If you like this video, please do not forget to give it a big thumbs up. Check out my other videos. Subscribe if you want to. I make new videos every Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I'll see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself. Bye.
My strange addiction, my doctors can't explain.